Welcome, Sarah Herren. Great to chat to you. Like when you joined, I was completely confused about who you were, and you jumped into micros, and your first micros, your perfect day report was like off the chart. And I went, how am I going to help this person? And you're not the typical postmenopausal woman. You look lean and thriving, and then you just continued to flourish in our programs. So I just wanted to talk to you about that and get all your background and your whole story. So yeah, how did you come to optimizing nutrition? You jumped in with micros and smashed it, but how did you get to the point of going, I need to do this?
So that the story is kind of long, like everybody's probably is. So I will. You guys can ask me to expand upon it if nothing makes sense. But at the time of me hitting 40, I was already eating a ketogenic diet, and I was not eating it for weight loss. I was eating it for kind of hormonal benefits, and I ran upon the hormonal benefits kind of on accident. I had jumped onto like a medical ketogenic diet for one of my children who was having some neuro issues. And rather than put him on anti seizure drugs first, because they weren't positive he was having seizures, I asked if there was an approach we could go that was a little softer. And we were absolutely willing to do a dietary change. The neurologist said, yes, great, try this. And all of his symptoms went away. And during that time, because I was experimenting it with him so that we were eating the foods together, I had some benefits. And so I stayed on it. My son ended up not needing to stay on the diet, but I stayed on it. And so I was able to be more lax and not be strict medical keto, and still get those benefits. And I was like, this is great. This is amazing. I've never eaten this much fat in my life, and my skin looked great and everything looked great at first. And I had a very active life. And all of a sudden, maybe a lot of you can relate to this, but when you're on keto, you aren't really hungry anymore. That fat satiety. I wasn't gaining weight. I wasn't losing weight. I was in a good place there, but I wasn't hungry anymore, really. And a lot of the keto community jumps onto that intermittent fasting. And a long time before, with some biohacking that I'd been listening to, I remembered that intermittent fasting and mice research. It was like an NPR podcast type thing I had heard about probably like 10, 13 years ago. And I was like, there's some benefits to that. So I started looking more into that. And I really started leading into intermittent fasting and how easy that was, and then got into extended fasting. And at the same time, all of this was kind of progressing with my diet. My activities levels decreased because I chose to go back to work. My kids stopped homeschooling, they started going to school. And so the amount of fun things I was doing and active things decreased, and I was sitting at a desk job all day. And I was aging, I was over 40 now. So when I started feeling sluggish and not able to do all of the cool things as quickly as I could, I didn't connect my diet and a nutritional perhaps deficiency going on. I thought, desk job, over 40, I need to hit it harder. And so I started hitting it harder. And I was having like all of a sudden really fast heart rates. I didn't know about my blood pressure yet, but my heart rate was going to like way too high, way too quickly. And so my first thought was, oh, it's an electrolyte imbalance. I should start messing with my electrolytes. And that maybe gave a little bit of a help, but it wouldn't really fix the issue. And so I was just trying a whole hodgepodge of different things, of different activities that I could handle. Still wasn't touching my diet at all, because my diet was really low processed and really super healthy. As far as what like my thoughts were on that, I felt like my micronutrients were going to work themselves out, and I wasn't paying attention to that at all. The stopping point during all of the keto stuff, at some point somebody had dropped optimizing nutrition in a group for somebody else, and I was like, man, this is a really cool program. I want to do this at some point when I have time. And so I had saved the link, and it just kind of planted that seed. And I think I started reading some of Marty's blogs and stuff, and I was like, this is really cool, this is definitely for me. But there wasn't a class starting at that time that fit what I was interested in, so I just didn't jump in right then. The like D-Day for me was on a waterfall hike with my kids when my heart rate hit 180 and wouldn't come down. And I'm in the middle of nowhere, no cell phone reception with my two kids. And I'm having to squat down and shunt my body basically to get my heart rate to come down and me to catch my breath. I'm going to get like emotional because it's really embarrassing too that I let myself get that sick.
Oh, wow.
So we didn't have a medical emergency that day. I was able to get myself low enough every 20 feet or so, I had to stop and rest. But we were able to make it back to the car. And that was when I went and ordered a huge functional medical panel to figure out what is going on. And what came back was basically like I had no white blood cells, I had no red blood cells, I had no iron, my vitamin D levels were low. I had no omega 3. Well, my omega 3, my omega 6 ratio was horrible. My omega 3s were like nothing. The rest of my blood work looked great. But I had really, like, I was practically in hypovolemic shock. And yeah, so that was what landed me. And I was like, okay, I've got to fix this. And so it was kind of that point that I stopped any fasting, I stopped keto, and I started eating back to kind of how I did before keto. And then scheduled myself into the first micronutrient class to make sure to start looking at the data on like a more regular level and try to figure out like if Marty's program would help me get back on track and stay on track so that I could heal without iron transfusions or iron infusions, blood transfusions. I didn't want to go that route. So I initially started supplementing and majorly addressing my diet.
So when was the start of the biohacker journey? Was that with your child with epilepsy and then the keto and spiraled into there, or did you get interested from way back?
I would say I was already interested way before that. Kind of. Um, definitely, definitely there's always been an interest, and I was definitely already listening to podcasts way before that. And I can't tell you even necessarily who I was following because it would just be being a mom at home and having something going in the background and allowing just little seeds to get planted and then reading research papers on stuff at night and just falling down rabbit holes of like, oh, this is really cool. This is what's going on in the world. But at that point, it wasn't really my reality. I was in my 20s and my 30s, and that was future Sarah needs, not current Sarah
Yeah.
needs, but really cool that there's all this information out here and just collecting and building a foundation of like what I might reach into in a toolkit later in life.
Yeah, you're harder to break when you're in your 20s and 30s, but then all of a sudden you really doubled down on the keto thing, fasting. Were you ever obese or have weight issues? You've always been fairly lean, but yeah, then the keto and the fasting really sounds like it really
Yeah.
nutrient depleted you to the point of being quite dangerous and anemic and weak. And you said you had low blood pressure as well and really elevated heart rate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The birth of my second child, pretty much from that point forward, I can look back on labs now and see that I was already ferritin deficient at that point.
Yeah.
And for anyone who isn't familiar, ferritin is your safe iron storage that your body stores. Your body kind of uses that as a checking, like a savings account, on how it's going to use iron processes in your body. So if your ferritin is at a good level, your body's going to use iron appropriately and you're going to have iron to burn. If you don't have enough in your savings account, your body's going to start holding on to things and stop using it. Nobody ever mentioned to me that I was ferritin deficient. Another fun fact is I was vegetarian for a good part of my life.
Yeah. You said your
And
dad was an SDA. Like it's a funny confluence of diet nerds of like Ted Name and myself, yourself having a Seventh Adventist background. How did that sort of influence your thinking about food?
so my dad left the church when he was a young adult before I was born.
Yep.
And so I was not raised SDA at all, but my grandparents still were. And so when
Yep.
they would come to visit, we would be vegetarian for the week.
Yep.
Um, and it was actually, this is kind of funny. So I grew up in Southern California. And when I was in my like early like middle school, I started getting really into ecological issues and ocean quality and water
Yep.
quality, Surfrider Foundation, the Sierra Club. Um, and I stopped eating fish completely at that point in
Yep.
my life, because I was concerned about overfishing. I was concerned about water quality, like all of these things that a 12-year-old shouldn't be worrying about. Like I was obsessed and really vocal and getting really grassroots green, participating in all of that and really making some choices that maybe weren't the best for me.
Right.
Um, and really was really emotional and really vocal about it and really like surrounded myself with a community that were vegetarians and vegans. I still, the memories of having to be vegetarian as a kid were still there when I was like, I was never going to be a vegetarian because that was horrible having to be vegetarian for the week, right? And pretend for the week when grandparents were visiting. But then somehow I came across Dr. McDougall and his book. And I was, I think, 14 when I read that book. And I was like, this is a bunch of baloney. I'm going to test this and do an N equals one experiment with myself and go vegetarian and see how I feel. And I actually felt great and it was fine. And it better aligned me with the people I was hanging out with and really active with. And so I stuck with it. Now I had other people that were opposed to that warning me, oh, you're going to be anemic. Oh, where are you getting your iron? Where are you getting your protein? And you have those buzzwords. And so doctors would regularly do iron tests on me. I was never anemic. The whole entire time I was vegetarian and vegan, I was never anemic and I was performing at the best of my life, probably because I was eating such a balanced variety of foods. The only things that I was restricting were meats, and I was really careful to get balanced proteins in. Um, so for everyone who's doing that, maybe it works. Everybody's personal, but I didn't have any health issues when I was vegetarian vegan. It was when my kids
Yeah.
had gluten and dairy issues that I brought meat into our lives. And that was when they were really young and they were having some like leaky gut kind of sensitivity issues where they were having they really looked like they were having autoimmune issues. And that's what the doctors were trying to diagnoose them with. And we ended
Were
up
the
doing an
ferritin
elimination
issues
diet then.
like due to postpartum after you had the kids, or is that sort of
With it, yeah, it was, I think, so, yeah, it after, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. There is so much story to tell y'all.
this
Um,
is great.
and I know everyone has their own thing, but
Yeah.
after my second daughter, I had a copper IUD placed and it went very poorly. And I had my cycles would never return back to normal after that. And I'll leave it there. But
Yeah.
keto fixed that for me. And that was years later. So after about a decade of suffering with very heavy cycles and being told that there was nothing wrong with me and the only thing they could offer me is hormonal birth control, which I wasn't interested in, it was just basically suck it up and deal with it. And keto fixed everything. And since then, everything's been fine after that as well. But for about a decade, I was losing too much blood. And
Yeah.
my ferritin
But
levels
then
just
you
continued
doubled
to
down on
decrease.
keto and it didn't,
Uh,
ended up with nutrient deficiencies and fasting and the like. So,
mhm. Yeah.
I'm gonna share the screen. There we go. Um, so I posted this morning in the lead up to the macros class we got starting on Saturday. Your diet doesn't need a name or a belief system, just enough nutrients. And you said this is my favorite Martyism. Made me laugh. Did you want to unpack what that whole concept means to you of not having a named diet? It sounds like you've been through a multitude of different dietary tribes and approaches passionately with all your heart. And when you fall into them to the nth degree, it doesn't always end well.
Right.
And along with that, Sarah, there's a question for you about what were you eating, not eating to cause the issues, just low carb, high fat?
Yeah.
Question mark. So weave that into what you're going to answer,
Yeah.
Marty.
Okay. So I think honestly, it was my extended fasting that did it. I think I dropped the amount I was eating to such a severity that having the restricted diet during my window of eating wasn't getting enough in. So if that makes sense, if I believe the extended fasting coupled with the restricted diet was the actual problem. I think if I had been paying attention to the amount of micronutrients I was getting during my eating windows and still doing the extended fasting, I would have been fine, right? Or if I was eating the restricted diet and not extended fasting at all, it would have all came out in the wash, and I still would have had probably some deficiencies like we all do, but it wouldn't have been to the level that it hit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's
Yeah,
part of the reason why we designed data-driven fasting is that to save people from that, I'm doing extended fasting and then I'm eating keto and then I'm afraid of protein because it might lower my ketones. And you get to a point where you get a very low protein, low nutrient, high fat diet that for you, it kept you, you didn't put on weight. A lot of people it does, but it's the nutrient deficiencies and the same thing with GLP-1s and the like. If you're not, it doesn't matter if you can use hacks to push through your natural appetite signals, but if that leaves you nutrient deficient, eventually, you're probably going to crash and something not going to end well, and you pushed it to the extreme. So yeah. So
yeah,
your name doesn't need a diet or a belief system, just enough nutrients. What does that mean to you now?
yeah. So when I first started ON, I was already trying to get rid of all of that mindset of what I had been eating for the last several years. That had kind of worked for me, but I was having to admit that it wasn't anymore. Um, And so I'm looking at food different, and a lot of foods that I had completely banned from my world. Um, I'm noticing, hey, this has some of the nutrients I'm missing, and it fits into the macros I'm trying to eat right now. Why don't I, and I love this food. Like, why am I not eating this? This isn't actually bad for me. Like white potatoes, for instance, which I know they don't have a ton of everything, but when I was actually looking at what I was missing for the day, that fit in perfectly. It wasn't a ginormous serving of it, but it
Yep.
fit in perfectly. And I was like, wow, why have I at face value just taken out just so many foods? Like, oh, I'm not going to eat apples because they have carbs. That's the dumbest thing ever. If anybody believes that, it's not dumb for you, but for me, why am I have an orchard full of citrus trees, and I didn't eat them for 3 years because they have carbs. And it just it all of this, it just I started laughing at myself. It was ridiculous. The things that I was doing just didn't make sense to me anymore, because now I'm seeing better results. I feel better. None of the hormonal issues have come back now that I actually have the nutrients that I need, which
Yeah.
is the whole reason I was doing the keto thing and eliminating all these foods. So that has been solved. My nutrient problems are solved, and all of a sudden, I'm not skinny fat. Can see more muscle definition around my waist, around my hips, my legs, and I'm just like, why wasn't I always doing this? And
Yeah.
I can eat anything. I can eat anything, and maybe not in huge amounts, but I just mean like anything that I would want to eat, because I've always eaten pretty much a no processed diet that's been healthy. I can eat any of those foods. I don't have to restrict and it just really, like, I just had to laugh at myself.
There's nothing really off limits. It's just what's optimal for you right now. And from a uh, going back to my religious roots, there's a vision that Peter saw that he said you can eat anything now, just go kill and eat. You can go, and so many of us are stuck in that religious dogma of either it's come from a religious background or an ethical background, or it's keto or carnivore or low fat or low carb or plant-based or Mediterranean or whatever. There's so many different named diets. It's like, how do you get the nutrients you need? What else matters? And the broader palette you can use, the more nutrients you can get, and the better you can feel. So that's just awesome. And like, you rocked in the first report I did for you. I went, I haven't met this person before, and here she is eating heart and liver and getting a diet quality score of 99. I went, I don't know how if I can help. Yes, you were like doing really well. But then you kept on smashing away and dialing it in, and you went from strength to strength to strength. And like, I got slides here from the chat, and my blood pressure is coming up from 70 over 44 to 90 over 53. And most people are struggling with high blood pressure, but because you'd fasted yourself into a nutrient deficiency, your blood pressure was super low. And then tell us about your ferritin a little bit more. You've got these results that have coming up into the normal range. How did that feel? What was the secret? Do you think you were supplementing with iron, but now you're dialing back the iron supplements, and because you're getting it from real food, it seems to be absorbed better and you're feeling better. Do you think there's something, can you supplement the way your way out of a nutrient deficiency?
I think it'd be really I think it'd be really hard. I mean, I will say, like, so April was when I took the tests. May was when I got the results. So I
Mm,
began my journey on my own before I joined ON
mm,
in May, really just heads down. What do I need to make this work? And learning about, all the cofactors that my body needs in order to be able to actually take the iron and turn it into hemoglobin. And then eventually get ferritin stores, right? Because the ferritin stores are going to come last. I was so anemic. Um, the supplementing did help, because from my test that I took in April to July, I did start to get better, but they only just kept growing. And by the time I started to win the first month, I was like, I feel like I can pull down, because I'm getting all of these nutrients from food.
mm.
And so it made my life so much easier. It's so much cheaper not having to buy supplements. I can't imagine that being
I
like a
can't actually
long-term
swallow
solution.
all those tablets. I choke it. So if I'm trying to supplement, you end up just going, it's a chore to choke down all these pills all day. And
Well, it's
why don't
way
you get
more
it from food?
complicated. It's way more complicated than that because it isn't just having to choke them down. It's trying to time them out in the day. Certain foods are going to interact with the supplement. They're going to bind together. So my body's not going to get them. I need to make sure I'm getting the right versions of these so that they're actually bioavailable. It was like such a mental load, but obviously like I had to do it. And I think you remember probably like the first videos I was like, or the first, our
Live
chats.
Q&As, yeah.
Yeah, where those were my questions. I was like, but how can I make sure, and this, I was so overcomplicating things
Mm.
because of what you have to do when you supplement, making sure that everything is timed right and gets in and amounts and all of that insanity.
Yeah, and we were diving into all the nutrient ratios and making sure everything was balanced. And it's like, Sarah, if you just get it from food, it's got the right ratios and cofactors that your body understands and can absorb, and you're not just going to be flushing it out or overdoing the calcium. It's going to end up in your arteries. The body knows how to deal with it. You're not going to get iron toxicity from a normal food because your body can assimilate that as required. It's not just a iron filings in a supplement or calcium in this bolus that your body goes, I don't really understand that. If it's in food, it gets absorbed and assimilated and used so much better. Is that your experience, that like using food versus relying on supplements really took you to the next level?
For sure. For sure. Yeah, I have this winter, I have gone back on vitamin D supplements because I can't be outside and I really haven't been able to figure out a good food source that works for vitamin D for me to fit everything. But outside of that, yeah, I can't imagine the amount of mental load
A
that
little bit
it
cold at your place at the
requires.
moment, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the
With the
snow is
snow.
finally, we just have like one roof still covered in snow. It's insane. This is
Crazy.
New Orleans. It's crazy.
That's unreal. It's so hot and humid here in Brisbane, but that's great.
Yeah.
So
Um, s-
Sarah, would you recap for me then? You've been with Marty using his teaching for less than a year, is that correct? And how did you find him again, please? Remind
It
me.
it was, I think, probably late 2023. Was in a it was in a women's based ketogenic like hormone balancing type group, and someone had thrown optimizing nutrition in a comment thread of somebody else's post, and I was like, wow, this sounds really interesting, and I really wish that I could remember the optimizer's name. I'm not in the group anymore, so I can't go and search that thread, but thank you whoever they were. Because yeah, it was, I landed on the website and just dug in and started reading everything.
you
Okay, and so
seem
then when you got to the website, what what did you start practicing first from his teaching? Because he teaches us about glucose. He teaches us about macros and micros. It sounds like the micronutrient education has been serving you the best. Is that correct?
Correct.
But
But
what,
at the time, yeah, at
yeah,
the time when I landed on the website, I did not know that I even needed micronutrient information. I was more interested in kind of getting off keto so that me and my family could eat the same foods. And it seemed like he had a pretty good system for helping people figure out what macros they needed. Because I really truly believe micronutrients just came out in the wash. I really didn't feel like that was something I ever had to worry about. And that because I ate good whole foods, that would just be worked out. And so it was just more of like wanting to see if I could get off of keto and have some kind of a different regular diet and still have the hormonal benefits that I was having from keto, which is what some of the woman that had shared that basically was that she had left the keto diet and had gone and been able to um, live the life she wanted to be living off of optimizing nutrition. And so that was what got me there. And so I was more perusing everything on like, how would this work for me? This is really fascinating. This is really cool. Um, but at the time there just wasn't a class scheduled. Otherwise I would have been already on ON before I hit my rock bottom emergency point.
we'll have to run more micros
okay.
courses.
And so for those who don't know, ON is just an abbreviation for optimizing nutrition, which is the big umbrella of everything that Marty teaches. The easiest thing to learn is about your glucose behavior, but then macros is kind of the next. But the fine details comes with the micronutrient education that he offers.
Yeah, it's just a sort of a leveling up, and like I said to Kathy earlier, DDF, data-driven fasting, using a glucose now known as forevermore glucose signals, is sort of a gateway drug to get people in to go, oh yeah, I do need to look at my food. What are these macronutrients? And then once you understand macronutrients, you go, wow, this is cool. What are the other things that I need to look after? The micronutrients. And we can optimize that quantitatively without falling into the extreme dogma, dietary trap, cult, religion that we all we we've always fall into little subcultures that make us feel good, and we're doing it. And if it's not working, we just do it harder, and then you find yourself with, you can't walk with your kids, and you've got low blood pressure, and which is crazy. I'll touch on Ren's question in a sec, but just when when Sarah joined us, like I did her report and she'd already read all the stuff and nerded out because she's a numbers geek like me, and had this diet quality score of 99, and she's eating, beef heart, and there's liver down here and a whole range of things. It's like, what an amazing diet. I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to help her with, but she's already made a bunch of great progress, being a bit smaller. Under 1,000 calories, but if you're small, you don't eat as much. But protein is up at 43% and 100 grams of protein. But then you just kept on dialing things in, and Ren, Judy said, were you ever insulin resistant? And you've done DDF, data-driven fasting. What sort of blood sugars do you see there with DDF?
I stay between like 60 and 90.
Okay, so really healthy low blood sugars, but what you've done since is, as you've dialed up your protein, got the nutrients you needed, you felt re-energized, and then you can see muscle mass is going up and fat mass is going down. So you were light but weak, and now it's super cool to see these massive changes in a short amount of time, not just because of the protein, but the nutrients that have given you the energy to be active and move your body and start training and doing Pilates and the what EMS ab stimulation, which is super cool. Never done that, but yeah, tell us about that journey from going from feeling you were light, you were little, but you felt awful and weak, and
Yeah, I mean, it was really like once I had an answer of what was going on, and after the big waterfall hike, I was kind of scared to do anything. And then it was like I was watching everything and watching my heart rate. It was trying to prove a friend wrong because they had asked me about my blood pressure. And it's funny because I have medical background. I should have thought about that, but I hadn't. And I got a blood pressure cuff just to prove a friend wrong that my blood pressure was fine, which is when I realized how low my blood pressure was. And then everything kind of made sense. But um, being able to stand up and not get dizzy, being able to walk across the room and not be out of breath. Um, Things that like you just kind of take for granted. And I'm almost getting to the point now where it's hard to even remember what a struggle that was through like April and May, really, and into June.
not that
Those
long.
were like the
6 months
worst
ago, you
months.
were a whole different person.
Yeah. I mean, it was, and it's crazy because like in what, like 2023, like fall of 2023, I was still able to do like aerial silks and go rock climbing.
Wow.
I was not doing either well anymore. I was losing my grip all of the time. I was having the high heart rate, but I didn't know what was wrong. Um, but I was still actively showing up and doing those things. But yeah, then it got to all the way to the summer of 2024, and it was really hard to even just, stand up and make dinner. Um,
Because
yeah,
you've
it's
been
really,
so
it's
dedicated to the right, what you believed, what you've been told to be the right diet, and nutrient deficiency yourself into feeling very low energy. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really
And
powerful.
it's embarrassing because people, friends in the community, family, they look to me as being somebody that they ask advice for. And because I research everything, because I do all of this, because I understand these things, because I'm able to connect dots. But when it comes to yourself, right, sometimes that's why you should reach out and, ask for help for yourself, because it's really easy to give good advice for other people. But when you're advising yourself and you're only advising yourself, your day to day, it's everything, all of it's normal, right? Like,
And
because
you
it
live in
didn't
your own echo
happen
chamber and just
overnight.
keep pushing yourself down the hole.
Yeah, yeah. And so all of a sudden it's like looking back 6 months and how bad I was, it's like, how in the hell didn't I see that coming? But I didn't at all, because it was just one day at a time, just chipping away at who I was and what I could do and everything else, until it hit that breaking point of like, okay, I'm dying. I'm dying, and I put myself here. And it's like, and
At
how? Because I
40.
was all doing it in the name of health. Yeah, it was insane. Um, it was wild, 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 wild.
Wild, wild, wild.
So
Ren had a
what you were
question about
doing,
nutrient. Oh, sorry, you go, Laurie.
what you were doing then, Sarah, is you were doing keto because you thought that that was healthy for you, but you didn't realize that you weren't getting the full scope of nutrition that you needed, and your body was slowly be suffering from that. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, but I just want to go back. I'm not saying that keto is necessarily imbalanced or has to be imbalanced. It was what I was eating and when I was eating. And it was
Right.
because keto was satiating for me. I was able to jump into that, trying to get that autophagy and all of these benefits with the extended fasting. I mean, and then here it goes. It's like, this sounds like anorexia. I don't think I was ever anorexic. I don't think I was ever bulimic. Those weren't my goals. And I
Right.
wasn't losing weight.
Right.
And
Because
that's why I felt, but it was definitely an eating disorder, basically, is what I had, was basically.
the
Mm.
keto was meeting the satiety thing, so your body was quieted, but you were also then pushing yourself hard in doing too much fasting. But
Mm.
when you were not fasting, you weren't then you didn't understand that you needed to be focusing on the micro nutrition that your body needed. Is that correct?
Yeah, and actually, you're reminding me of another thing that happened to me during keto. Was I really screwed up my gut biome. And there's a lot of influencers out there, that are scientists and researchers, that are out there saying that we don't really need a microbiome, that that's not something you need, and that you can totally just live without vegetables and fruit, right? And I liked that, because at this point in my life, where I loved eating vegetables and I could eat them on a keto diet, and so I was. But all of a sudden, I was getting really bloated all the time and really uncomfortable with the vegetables that I'd always eaten. And then I start hearing this noise that, hey, maybe it's okay and you don't really need those. And so I stopped eating those and kicked them out of my diet, because they were making me uncomfortable anyways. Um, yeah, and so I think that's a lot of where the deficiency started coming from as well. Was I wasn't absorbing nutrients from the food that I was eating, because my gut had gotten out of whack with the amount of fat I was eating, and it just kind of killed off my gut by my
Wow.
microbiome was gone.
Thank you
And so that was one of the other tests that I had done, and I forgot. Thank you. Because yeah, I
for
did do
clarifying that. Thank you.
yeah, I did a gut panel as well during all this, because when I first got back the nutritional deficiency, I was like, this doesn't even make sense. I eat really healthy. I was that just like disillusioned by like, what I'm eating is healthy. This doesn't work. This doesn't even make sense. This must be somebody else's blood work. I mean, I was just so disillusioned. So I was like, there must be something wrong. I must have some kind of an infection or something. Maybe I have a parasite. I don't know. Let's have this full gut panel ran to figure out why I'm not absorbing the nutrients that I'm eating. And the gut panel came back, and it was basically like I was totally healthy, except for that I was missing a bunch of the communal probiotics that I should have, that most of the community has. And I'm like, huh, and I can't eat vegetables. Okay, well, maybe I should get on some really good probiotics and start eating food again, and not just eating fat and protein.
So
Okay.
what are you doing then, or what did you do to start addressing your that second brain? They call our gut our second brain. What did you do?
So I jumped on a modified version of the GAPS protocol first. And anybody who isn't familiar with GAPS, I'm
Mm.
not necessarily recommending it, but it was something that was familiar and in my toolkit for what I used for my kids to help
Bit
us
of
through when they were having.
adjacent to keto, Natasha Campbell McBride's work. She's really intelligent. I don't think everybody
And
needs to be at that extreme, but if you get really messed up gut and autoimmune, then it's worth checking out.
GAPS protocol is what we used to figure out what my kids could eat and not react to with the issues they were having when they were really young. And then we were able to heal them and go back to eating regular food. But we used the GAPS protocol. So I kind of went in that same mindset and was like, I'll do GAPS. And I started on GAPS and I instantly recognized at this point, I'm just going to a different restrictive diet. And short term, this is okay to just nourish my intestines and nourish my gut. Um, but I can't do this long term. So I limited myself to a month on GAPS and then went to just doing a really good probiotic. It's I'm not taking it anymore. I only took it for about 3 months, but it was immediate. It was pretty much immediate benefits where I was no longer. I weaned myself off of it. I didn't start bloating. I was able to eat, and I didn't have any of the digestive issues. So I just was like, I don't need this anymore. But it specifically had one of the communal bacteria that is an anaerobe that we can't really get outside of our own body. You get it when you're born, and that's it. And so it's hard to manufacture in a lab. The probiotics were very expensive. Maybe it was all just a rouge and it was a waste of money, but with everything else I was doing, I seem to be fine. I'm not going to go and get another gut panel unless I have a reason to, but I'm going to take a stab that my communal bacteria has now rose to normal levels because I can eat food and I'm not, I don't have uncomfortable feelings anymore.
Ren had a,
By any,
sorry, go on, Laurie.
by any chance, does the phrase L. reuteri ring a bell with you? Was it that bacteria? Or
No, I would have to look it up to get back on that, but it's
somebody's going to want to know. So if you can, after this is over,
No,
then
which
put it
gut
into
bacteria
the,
were we missing?
put your information
Ren,
somewhere in the
Ren had a
network.
question about what are there any supplements you would recommend, or what we do in micros is show people how to get all the nutrients they need from the food they're eating, and if we share what like how we do that, which on Sarah's report is quite spectacular. Like we pull up all the nutrients we say, in her first round, it's just folate and zinc, and then the algorithm just said, okay, we're going to dial up the foods that contain more folate and zinc. Not many people start at 100 or 99, and we just go, okay, which of the foods you're currently eating do you need to eat more of to get the nutrients you need? And then people go, well, I don't need to be taking that supplement or that supplement or that supplement. And you mentioned that you're taking vitamin D because it's winter and you can't get out in the sun. But is there any, supplements that you still keep on the table? No.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, no, full points. And you're
Well,
feeling
I am still
without
taking iron.
relying on the supplements.
I am still taking iron. And I have to right now because I cannot eat enough iron.
Mm,
But I found an iron that works for my body that
mm,
I can take an exact amount of it. I did the blood work. If anybody else is suffering from anemia and this is helpful, you can't just take too much iron because then your body will push it into dangerous areas and it can go into your
mm.
organs, which you don't want to do. So you can't just fix an iron issue overnight. It's a slow process. But with
Yeah.
my diet and the iron supplement that I take, I have a safe amount that I can take that doesn't put too much iron into my bloodstream at once. Um, and until my ferritin levels get out of the pits, I'm going to continue taking an iron supplement with my diet because basically my diet is giving my body what I need every day, but I need to still put some in storage right now.
Yeah. So
Mike
you
has a
current,
question
go on.
about protein percentage. Do you know, Sarah, what you're doing for protein percentage? He's asking.
Currently, right now, I have dialed it back to between like 28 and 32 is what my working is right now. The 40% was really, really good when I was pretty much sedentary because I couldn't do anything. And 40% was really, really good for me there. But since I started becoming more active, I started being more hungry and I was able to increase the carbs I was eating and dial back the protein some. And I haven't gained any weight and I've continued to gain muscle and lose fat. So my weight's been staying really steady, which is great because that was kind of my goal. I did, from the time when I joined ON, I did lose some inflammation weight because I had some inflammation going on with all of these
Mm.
deficiencies. Um, but yeah.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting observation is that people who are less active need to dial up that protein percentage more and more, unless you're like Mike and trying to get absolutely diced and 12-pack abs. He's up at 50% and lifting like a crane every day, but you can tell I'm intimidated. But yeah, if you're more active, then you tend to have a lower protein percentage, but you're probably still getting like you were on 100 grams of protein before. You're probably getting a bit more than that now because you're able to eat more. So you still get the protein you need and more energy and more nutrients because you're active, and the nutrients sort of powered you up to be more active so you can then build more muscle and then eat more and get more nutrients. So I just wanted to go through some of the food photos that you shared in the group just to show people what Sarah eats, what it looks like. I think it's, these are little protein pancakes and asparagus and chicken, and there was a chili soup. And I mean, it doesn't look like any freaky different diet. It's just a variety of foods. And if you've got a wide palate, you can throw in whatever you want, but it's whole foods, it's minimally processed foods. There's a green egg omelette with the spinach blended in. What was that? Quail. Is it a pumpkin
Yeah.
squash?
Acorn squash. Yeah.
And mussels, and it's just a plenty of oranges. You're getting into citrus trees out the back now, and eggs and chicken, and like it
That was
just looked
a,
like
yeah, oyster. It was like an oyster artichoke bisque, but it was modified to not be so fatty. But yeah, it
yeah.
looks really gross. I am not a food photographer, y'all.
But I love, like I said, Sarah, I want to see what you're eating because it's just a fascinating diet, and everybody's posting their different versions of nutrient density, and it doesn't have to follow a strict template. It's just colorful and looks fresh and nourishing, and yeah. So, um,
Marty, you might want to go back to Sarah's blueprint that
oh yeah,
has blue lines on it, because I think that could be confusing to people. You know, you can step it back to
yeah, sure.
how even where that comes from. How did Sarah get that information?
Yeah, good segue. So in the first week of the macros class and the micros class, wants to go, hey, what should my macros be for me? And it's like, I have no idea. I cannot tell you what your macros can be. I can give you a calculator that we've developed, which is going to be wrong. Best way to do it is to track what you're currently eating, and then in the macros masterclass, we tweak it to increase satiety. So there's 13 particular nutrients in my algorithm that will boost satiety. And this nutrient fingerprint just shows you which ones you need to prioritize. So way down the bottom here, this is an excellent starting point, by the way, and most people are missing quite a few that we have to boost. But down the bottom, it's quite easy to get vitamin K1 and vitamin B12. She's eating heart and liver in week one. It's like, yeah, I got nothing to give you, but it gives you the macros. And then what my algorithm does is it then shuffles all the foods and runs through like 100 different scenarios to increase in macros the diet quality score. And so for Sarah, it was like, hey, let's eat some more Greek yogurt, um, the beef heart, eat a bit more of that. Oatmeal came up, chia seeds came up at the top. And basically what it does, most people's aren't as complex
Pause
and
for a
long as
second.
this. Sorry, go on,
Pause for a
Laurie.
second, Marty. What people need to know is that chart you were just showing,
Yep.
you didn't create those foods for Sarah. You took what she was already eating and said, okay, you're already eating this. Now we'll shuffle it around and you eat more of this and less of this. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
and like we've just rebranded our whole package of glucose signals, 2020 macros, 2020 micros to focus on the short list of up to 20 foods and 20 meals that will work for you all the time. And that's the process my wife and I went through when we started on how do we dial in her blood sugars and get insulin and blood sugars stabilized to help her. It's a metamorphosis from what you're doing now to find, hey, this meal worked really well. This meal worked really well. Oh, the pasta carbonara and the bread for type 1 diabetes is garbage, and we're going to take that out of rotation. So it's just what are you doing now, and how do we tweak that? And what we do with these Your Perfect Day reports is look at what you're eating now, and with a algorithmic looking at the fundamental, what are the nutrients in your food, show you which ones to eat more of. Every diet says eat less, eat less, eat less. eating bad, hunger bad, you're bad for wanting to eat more. But when you give your body the nourishment, the nutrients it needs, everything just settles down and it's beautiful. So yeah, it's the only dietary approach that says eat more, but it's the question is what do you need to eat more of? So
Right. So you kicked out of your wife's diet the pasta carbonara, but Sarah was already eating beef heart. You didn't just add that to her list. So
correct,
people, if
correct.
they gag at that thought, you're not going to be throwing beef heart at them. You're going to take
No, no.
what they're able to enter in for their food,
Mm,
and then you tweak it around for them to
mm.
help move them in the right direction, correct?
Correct. It's what are you doing now? And let's tweak that. And it's tweak it till you make it. And my mate Maddie Lansdowne talks about one tweak a week. And that's the way to get success. It's incremental habit building. And every time somebody goes from, I found this new guru, I'm gonna do, go from this to that, they break themselves. And it's like, no, 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 just slow down, just, little incremental things, and you'll be with us in 4 months. And like Sarah going, I feel like a new human versus week two. I crashed and burned. This is really hard and I'm overwhelmed and I'm giving up because I tried to do everything and read every book all in 1 week and tried to implement 10 different gurus, conflicting dogmas, and my brain blew up. And yeah, yeah, your brain can't handle that. And your body definitely can't handle getting conflicting messages.
Right. So you're the line that you've said before, we can't do zero to hero.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. All right. We have 12 minutes, 13 minutes left. And so if you
Floor's
have
open.
questions, now is a wonderful time to put them in the chat box and we can see them there and we can try to get to them for you. And Sarah, is there anything else that you think you want to add to what you've said? My understanding is you were on keto, it was great, but you were starting to falter and that was creating issues. The issues drove you to find more answers. You were in another group. You thought, oh, optimizing nutrition, that sounds interesting. So then you went and found Marty last year or so and started improving your diet by using his macros or
Yeah,
micronutrients.
so like Marie said, so when I came in, I already had like right a pretty good diet. But being able to use the perfect day report and some of the other tools in what is the name of the website, Marty? Is it Nutritional Optimizer?
Yeah,
It's like
nutrient
reverse,
optimizer.
right? The
Nutrient
Nutrient Optimizer,
optimizer. Yeah.
where they would, they start they're that website's also pulling in your data from Chronometer if you link it, and it starts throwing out some suggestions like, hey, maybe try this food,
Mm.
maybe this one would fit. And I would go through and I would look, and then I would maybe look up on Tableau or look up on other nutritional charts and see like, why is it suggesting this food? This sounds disgusting. Or I never even heard of this before. What is it? And so it clued me into foods that I would have never even considered adding to my diet, and I love. But
You
it
now
wouldn't have been
love.
something I would have even tried. And then some of them were like, leave it behind. I tried it and I was like, yeah, not again. Um, but that was really, I think, what helped me figure out like how I can eat like a regular diet without having to overeat to get all of the nutrients in, um, and just get all of those numbers pushing further.
It's a gamified nutritional adventure, and when you see it in numbers and charts, you go, okay, that's what I need, and how do I get that, and how do I nourish my body with what it needs? And somebody else, do I need to eat liver? Interestingly, you can do really well without organ meats if you've got a bunch of other foods. So you don't have to eat organ meats, and liver only provides protein and a smattering of B vitamins, and you can get that from other foods as well. So,
I found now like oyster and mussel is what I'm eating more of for everything, all of the minerals that I needed, basically that I was
mm,
leaning on organ meat for. I'm now getting from mussels and oysters. That's
mm,
been like a big switch. And I would have never tried mussels or oysters if it wasn't for them popping up in like, hey, maybe try this.
mm.
We've
That's
got a
cool.
hand up from Kathy, and Kathy, as you get ready to unmute, I'm going to throw out these other questions too. Marie is asking, can we have an organ supplement if organ meat is not palatable? I'm in your camp, Marie. And Mike is asking you, Sarah, besides Marty, who are some of your favorite health, nutrition influencers, podcasters, authors? So if you don't get that answered, we can throw that in the community, and I
Yeah.
will try to remember that too. And then, okay, so
I might hit the first one. In terms of organ meats, you don't need organ meats necessarily. You just go, what foods do I currently eat that contain the B1, B12 protein, and we just dial those up a bit. And you don't have to go to weird and wonderful foods. Most of the foods you need, you're already eating. And then if you go, oh, I can't get that, that, and that, we've got lists, we've got massive lists and pictorial things that you can pick any food from just about any um, species, background, food group to fill those gaps. So yeah, it's not like you have to eat meat or chicken or fish or oysters. The world is your oyster. There's a massive palette of foods you can choose from. You don't have to narrow it down to one named diet and belief system and subculture. Because if you do, like Sarah, you can just take that belief too far to the point that you break yourself and you go, I'm not getting the results. I'll do it harder because I believe this. And that can be dangerous.
I think the big thing too, you want to make sure like that the food you're choosing is accessible to you,
Mm,
between cost and availability locally and that it's palatable. Because yeah, if it isn't palatable, it's not going to be a good choice. I'm not a big fan of liver or beef heart, but I figured out ways to make it hidden in foods that I couldn't pick it up. But that was time consuming. So as soon as I found foods that I could get those same nutrients for instead, and that was through optimizing nutrition and using those tools, I was like, cool, give them to me. And I found ways because it made it easier. It made it easier for me to prepare my food, and I like doing it better.
how do you go with your family? Like your family's an like, interesting hodgepodge. Your kid needs keto and gut issues, and then we ran the satiety report for your husband, and it was like he's trying to put on weight and be active and can't put on weight. So it's like, yeah, let's go the fat and carbs together, mate. And donuts are on the cards for you because you want to get bigger and be active. And so it's fascinating to see how you can dial down the satiety for people who are underweight and very active and want to put on more muscle. So yeah, so how do you? Cooking must be crazy for all those different dietary
So
approaches. How do you do
for
it?
my son, my son did not end up needing to stay on keto. So the issue, the potential seizure behavior that he was having was just a weird blip of childhood, and it did go away. So
That's
it
great.
ended up just self-resolving. So he's not on any special diets anymore, but he
Yep.
is his father's child, and they both are just thin as a rail and super active. And then my daughter is a competitive athlete, so she's super active. And we just add a lot of things to bases. So I'm the base, and then we add a bunch of things in for them until they feel good. And that seems to work pretty good.
Yeah. Kathy.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Kath.
I want to first say to Sarah, thank you for coming on and being willing to be the guinea pig here. It takes a lot of courage to relive all that you've been through. And it's just amazing to me as I hear each person's story over these, I'm going on 4 years here, is everybody's so different, but you can learn from each other. And because I'm telling you, the first year I did this, I thought I had to eat liver. I thought I had to eat liver. I wasn't going to get that was the micros class for me. And I did, and I ate it, and I hated it, and I kept trying to eat it, and I hated it. And then I went on to salmon, and I don't love salmon. So I'm learning that, I can find the foods that work best for me,
Mm,
and that helps me stick to it instead of I kept trying to jump through different things. So my question for you, Sarah, is for me, everything is very emotionally attached. What can I have? What can I not have? Trying to sometimes be having too many different foods, thinking I might miss out something here or there. I eat enough vegetables? Do I eat enough meat? Whatever. How has this affected you emotionally? And have you seen, did you have any depression, discouragement, anything like that, which I would think you would? And did that change a lot once you found the path that seemed to be the best for you?
Yeah, I was in some pretty dark places, and for a really long time, even after I was seeing all of my lab work improve, my blood pressure wasn't, and I was really scared I had done some real permanent damage. And it was kind of hitting the point of what's the point? Um, because I can't do anything. I
Given
can't
up.
stand up and walk across the room. Yeah, like I wasn't completely to that point, but it was kind of like, how long do you give this? Because there isn't really a lot of medication for people for with low blood pressure. The few medications that there are, not that I'm a medication person, I'm kind of really anti that, but um, if I had hit that and I was going to have to go that route, the medications are really scary that they have for low blood pressure. So, and they're really not that effective anyways. So, um, yeah, for sure. I was definitely in a really dark place, but also really committed to sticking with this and figuring out a way to make this work for me, and for my family in the meantime, without, giving them liver and beef heart and such. Um, that I had to work because I had to get better. And I've, as long as I get to be here, I want it to be quality, and I don't want to be sedentary. I don't want to be missing out on all of the fun things. Um,
Thank
And then
you.
you've worked out how to quantify nutrition and saw the numbers and saw the nutrients. And for you, as particularly as a numbers brain, you came to us nearly, optimal, which is hard to do. But I think for everybody else, it's like we step you through that process one step at a time. So you don't have to do it alone. And so much over the 5 years, we've seen people spend a lot of time trying to do the little Jenga game of trying to get your nutrients. But the Your Perfect Day report just says, this is what you're eating now. Eat a bit more of that, eat a bit less of that. And it just solves the problem actively for people. So yeah, I'm excited about going forward with that approach.
yeah, but the biggest part for me was introducing me to new foods and new things that I would have never considered and didn't see how they would fit into my diet because I didn't even know. And the Optimizing Nutrition brought those to me and was like, hey, maybe try some of the, and they were great. And then the other thing is the lists and just getting this in your mindset, because that's made this all very obtainable for me to continue, during the holidays. I was like, I am not going to do all of my crazy planning because I do go in, like I spend a lot of time manipulating recipes to make them palatable for my whole family. I spend a lot of time planning, either in my subconscious and then also on paper and computer and such. But I was like, during the holidays, I wasn't going to do any of that. But I just leaned on my food lists and just we did our grocery shopping just off of the food lists, and I threw stuff together more tapas style than what I normally eat and normally do. And I was like, this is really easy. And I stayed on plan, and my numbers continued to improve through the holidays. And I was like, this is amazing, because I still had gingerbread cookies and I had, alcohol, which I normally don't drink at all. Um, but I didn't like fall off completely because I was able to just lean on those lists and the meals that I already know. I don't know. It just was easy. It was super easy.
And you don't have to be
That's awesome.
perfect. It's
Thank you.
about 4 weeks of quantifying, and then you've got those 20 foods and 20 meals up to. It doesn't even have to be that many that you can rotate and you go, These are my safe foods." You might have the gingerbread cookie and a beer one day occasionally, but then you're very assured that these are the foods that work for you.
Shrimp,
Shrimp.
shrimp.
Kathy loves the shrimp. Thank you,
I'm back
Kath.
on shrimp. It's my
That's
safe
great.
food. It's back integrated. Thank you so much for letting me ask. Thank you.
Kathy's found
Let's
that.
try to squeeze in one more question from Ren, and then we're out of time.
I just want to say that this was really interesting from a perspective of almost all the conversation comes from being overweight. And this is a conversation with someone who has been thin her entire life, but still has or had issues with proper nutrition. And I
Mm,
think there's a big fallacy out there
mm,
that thin people think that they are nutritiously sound
mm,
because they are thin. So I just think this is a huge, powerful lesson in data is important to know no matter what size or what you
mm,
think, your your physique is showing you.
And then that was actually something I wanted to talk about. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Brendan. Now I know we're out of time. But the same thing, you know, when you're overweight and you go into the doctor and the doctor says none of those problems exist, it's all on your weight. When you're thin and you go in, it's the same thing. Nothing's wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. And the lab work doesn't get done, or if it does, it doesn't get actually analyzed properly.
And they
Where
say
I
it's
can
all
look
in your
back
head.
now and
Here's an
see,
antidepressant.
yeah, here's the antidepressant, or here's get on hormones. And without even testing your hormones.
Yeah. I'm just trying to start a rumor that nutrition is about nutrients, and we all need nutrients, whether we're skinny or we want to lose weight. Our body needs nutrients to thrive, to be energized. And if you're underweight and have an eating disorder, then you need more nutrients because you're probably not getting enough. Even if you found that way to hack the fasting and be skinny, you still need nutrients to feel amazing. And then Sarah's just rocked it and got really massive body composition in just a few months, and feels totally different. But if you're overweight, then your body's craving nutrients too, and a whole food system is designed to be cheap, profitable with very low nutrition. And if you give your body the nutrients it needs, it goes, oh, I've got all this fuel stored on the body. You're giving me the nutrients and I'm not hungry anymore. So it works, and over again. I'll just see it work with all sorts of people. So yeah, I'm thrilled. So I love these share things. It's like we got Miley coming up soon, and yeah, it's gonna be cool. And then Laurie, you're gonna do the was it 7 year anniversary at the end of the year? She's been doing DDF, testing her blood sugars and using this guide for that many years, which is crazy. So and then she went, hey, you should tell more people about this. It's really cool. So yeah, thank you for that, Laurie. And thanks for co-hosting and helping me out with this. And thank you, Sarah, for doing this. Great to hear your story and get more background and just share that journey and a different journey, different path. So thank you, everyone.
For asking and having me.
Yeah, we'll see. And thanks for all your contributions in the community. It's been just great to have you there pushing everybody else on, and building the community is what I love the most. That it's not just me with a theory and numbers, it's a whole community of people that have experienced this and want to help other people because they've been helped. And I think that'll grow it into a movement, and then we can take over the world. Thanks, everyone. See you next week. Bye.